Gandhi's Passion, The Life and Legacy of Mahatma Gandhi by Stanley Wolpert. Chapter 15, From Prison to London and Back. For almost 9 months, Gandhi remained behind bars in Yerwada prison, while Britain's Labour government tried in vain to untangle India's constitutional knots. The Nehru report had left most Muslims dissatisfied. The Simon Commission's report provoked universal discontent and repeated protest. Then, just as global economic depression threw millions of British factory labourers out of work, Gandhi's boycott of British goods and his Satyagraha movement added to Britain's market misery by shutting down India's once inexhaustible demand for British fine cottons, silks, and other manufactured products. Idealism sometimes causes pain, but a human being without idealism is like a brute. Gandhi wrote from prison. Our highest duty is to see that our idealism takes the right direction. In June, before he too was jailed, Motilal Nehru was interviewed by the London Daily Herald's George Slocum, who asked what terms he required to attend a round table conference. We must be masters in our own household, Motilal replied, insisting that India's Congress would only meet Britain now, nation to nation on an equal footing. Slocum had earlier interviewed Gandhi in prison and fearlessly reported British brutality against Satyagrahis. His reports and interviews added to the worldwide calls for Gandhi's release. So the Viceroy tried reconciliation, using as his emissaries Taj Bahadur Sapru and M.R. Jayakar, both ex-Congress Brahmins, now leaders of the Liberal Party. They went to Gandhi's prison cell seeking his approval of a note they had drafted before bringing it to both Nehrus and who shared a cell in Naini prison. Gandhi told Sapru and Jayakar that he would be willing to attend the Round Table Conference in London if, on behalf of the Congress, he could raise the question of independence. He would then call off civil disobedience, though not the picketing of liquor shops or foreign cloth merchants. He would promise to end raids on salt depots, but Indians must be allowed to obtain their own salt from near the sea. All Satyagrahi prisoners must be released and all fines paid under the recent Repressive Press Act refunded. On July 28, 1930, Sapru and Jayakar brought Gandhi's note to the Nehrus in Naini, returning the next day. The mediators went back again in August, arranging to bring both Nehrus as well as Sarojini Naidu, Vallabhbhai Patel, and 2 other Congress leaders to confer with Gandhi in Yerwada. On the next day, August 15, 1930, anticipating by 17 years the birthday of independent India, they all signed a dear friend's letter to Sapru and Jayakar to be taken to the Viceroy. Drafted by Jawaharlal, their letter called upon the British government to cease its age-long exploitation of the Indian people and to get off our backs and do some reparation for the past wrongs by helping us to grow out of the dwarfing process that has gone on for a century of British domination. The Viceroy was not, however, ready to agree to any of those demands, so the first Round Table Conference convened in London before year's end without a single Indian National Congress representative in attendance. Gandhi remained calm within his prison, temple, mandir as he called his cell. The sky is the ceiling of my train, he wrote Vallabhbhai Patel's devoted daughter Mani Bhen a few days before he was released in January of 1931. To my beloved Mira, now journeying through Sindh, he wrote as at greater length. What you say about rebirth is sound. It is nature's kindness that we do not remember past births. A wise man deliberately forgets many things. The next day, Purna Swaraj Day, Gandhi was informed of his release by Viceregal amnesty. My present feeling is that I shall be leaving peace and quiet and going into the midst of turmoil. The first roundtable conference had ended a week earlier. Prime Minister MacDonald declared that India's new central government should be a federation embracing all Indian states and British India, with a bicameral legislature. The precise structure would have to be determined after further discussion among princes and elected representatives of British India. The central legislature and the executive would have features of dualism. Diarchy, first introduced into British India's constitution in 1920. Special powers were reserved by the executive, including those related to the military, police, and treasury, while some powers were transferred to departments run by elected representatives, notably education and public health. Hoping that Gandhi might help him to inaugurate power, cheering at the center, the Viceroy granted unconditional amnesty to his greatest prisoner. I have come out of jail with an absolutely open mind, unfettered by enmity, unbiased in argument, and prepared to study the whole situation from every point of view. Gandhi informed the press as he emerged from prison and headed for Bombay. The next day he learned of Motilal's rapidly failing health and took a train to Allahabad, reaching his old friend's bedside late that night. I am going soon, Mahatma ji, and I shall not be here to see Swaraj, old Nehru told him. But I know you have won it and will soon have it. Congress leaders gathered in Motilal's great mansion, Anand Bhavan, abode of peace, which he bequeathed as a national trust to the Congress several years earlier. Government's capacity for brutality is so great that we must gird up our loins to face more of it, Gandhi told his Congress comrades. We have still to free the oppressed millions in the world, to free the entire world. It waits for a miracle from India. He spoke to them softly in Gujarati, but the passionate intensity and power of his message rivaled that of any general. Congress resolved not to retract its resolutions on civil disobedience and to continue peaceful picketing of all foreign cloth and liquor shops. Motilal Nehru died on February 6th and Gandhi spoke at his funeral in Allahabad. What we see before us is a national sacrifice, he told the vast crowd assembled to honor the dead lion of India. We are here today to serve the cause of peace, and it behooves us to be peaceful. May God inspire you. Gandhi remained at Anand Bhavan, where the Congress Working Committee met a few days later to elect Vallabhbhai Patel as its next president and to plan its next move. Some moderates urged negotiations with the Viceroy, but Gandhi was hesitant in view of reports of continued police brutality. Under organized despotism, lucklessness is luck, poverty a blessing, riches a curse, evil is enthroned, goodness nowhere. He explained to a follower, all values are transposed. We have only felt from afar the heat of the fire we must pass through. Let us be ready for the plunge. That is my reading just now, and it fills me with joy. A halting peace will be dangerous, and I can see no sign of real peace coming. But before taking the plunge, he wrote again to dear friend Irwin, asking if they might meet, hoping to meet not so much the Viceroy of India as the man in you. Irwin wired his reply that night, inviting Gandhi to New Delhi on Tuesday, February 17, 1931, for what would become a most remarkable summit. The tiny half-naked Mahatma meeting alone with Britain's tallest, most immaculately attired Viceroy. There was no one present except Gandhi and myself, Irwin noted after the first meeting. I dwelt upon the change in British opinion, which I hoped India would not make of no avail. The Viceroy urged Gandhi to accept the principles of federation as well as reservations and safeguards that had been hammered out at London's first conference. He asked whether Gandhi and his friends had in mind a grudging truce or a permanent peace, and was pleased to be assured it was the latter. That night, Gandhi wrote his own version of the meeting, very well impressed by the Viceroy, who talked frankly and wants to make peace. In response to Gandhi's insistence on the release of all satyagrahis, the Viceroy said that would be difficult. Irwin had drawn a clear distinction between those prisoners guilty of violence or inciters to violence and others, rejecting the possibility of any early release for the former. He promised, however, that justice should be done. When Gandhi pressed him to withdraw all repressive ordinances and punitive police, the Viceroy promised to make enquiries into both matters. Irwin, in turn, urged immediate lowering of the temperature of Bombay's picketing of cloth and liquor shops and salt protests. Gandhi promised to look into that. They agreed to meet alone again the next day. Before the second meeting, Gandhi wired his friend Perrin Captain in Bombay, asking him to alert Congress to scrupulously avoid all violence, direct, indirect, passive or active, by any picketers. Wire received came the immediate reply. Instructions will be carried out. On Wednesday at 1:40 p.m., Gandhi emerged from Dr. Ansari's house in Delhi, where he stayed during the summit to cheers of a waiting crowd. Use Khaddar, he told them, smiling before he got into the car that drove him to the viceregal palace. His second meeting, however, was hardly as encouraging as the first. He found Irwin more cautious, noting, "Today the salt tax, suspension of collection of land revenue and picketing alone were discussed." Irwin feared the reactions of his own friends in London like Winston Churchill, who was nauseated to see the half-naked fakir striding upstairs to the residence of the Viceroy. I explained to him that in everything I had said, I was only speaking personally for myself, and on many matters it would be necessary to consult local governments or the Secretary of State, and on all matters it would be necessary for me to consult my own counsel. The Viceroy went on to insist that everything he'd said about reciprocal action by the government was based on the effective abandonment by Gandhi of his civil disobedience campaign. Gandhi refused to promise the abandonment of Satyagraha and explained that if after attending the next London conference he remained dissatisfied with results, he would have to resume the movement. That really worried Irwin, who said it would put him in an impossible position. His Majesty's government should never consider taking the steps they were discussing, if at any moment in subsequent discussions they might be told that Congress planned to resurrect its campaign. Then Gandhi agreed not to do so as long as talks were in progress. Irwin now wanted to open further talks to more voices and ears, suggesting that Sapru and Jayakar be invited to join them. Gandhi agreed later, referring to those two as sub-viceroys, but said he would like to invite Jawaharlal and Vallabhbhai for his side. The viceroy then expanded his guests to include several officials, thus turning their personal summit into a mini round table conference. That night, Irwin cabled Secretary of State Wedgwood Ben, requesting clear and precise instructions from the India office as to just how far he might go in his negotiations with Gandhi. I am sure it would be dangerous to permit Congress to say to the world that everything was open for discussion and that they had made it clear as a condition of participation that if they were not satisfied, they would resume civil disobedience. He liked Gandhi and had learned privately that he too was pleased with their talks and wants peace. Nonetheless, Irwin remained very apprehensive of Gandhi's clever maneuvering to reopen constitutional issues resolved by the first Roundtable Conference. On the next day, Irwin told Gandhi he needed time to consult London and hoped they would resume their talks with a larger group in another week. Gandhi regretted the delay but never lost patience. That week, he addressed crowds in Delhi, urging pickets to abjure violence. He also spoke to the Muslim League Council, accepting their invitation as coming from 21 crores, 210 millions of his brethren, continuing, I am a Bania and there is no limit to my greed. It has always been my heart's desire to speak not only for 21 crores but for 30 crores of Indians, to strive for Hindu-Muslim unity. To achieve such unity was the mission of my life, he told them, adding that if I die striving for it, I shall achieve peace of mind. On February 27th, after receiving his instructions from London, Irwin invited Gandhi to meet him again. They talked for 3 hours, going over all earlier points, each digging deeper into his entrenched position. He was in a very obstinate mood, Irwin wrote after Gandhi left him, concluding that he was either bluffing or had made up his mind that he did not mean to settle. Gandhi opted that evening to walk the 5 miles back to Ansari's house in Daryaganj, rather than allowing himself to be driven in the vice-regal vehicle. They next met on March 1st and were quickly deadlocked over questions of boycott and picketing. Gandhi insisted that he meant peaceful picketing, which was permissible under Britain's common law. Irwin maintained that peaceful picketing was impossible in the present overheated political climate of India. Next, they tackled police violence, which Gandhi called savagery. The viceroy nodded but explained that were he to admit that justifiable point, it would open floodgates of charges, inquiries, and bitterness against the police. I therefore told him that, inasmuch as we really wanted peace, would not it be better to drop it altogether? Much to Irwin's surprise and delight, Gandhi agreed. Then they moved on to the salt tax. Irwin startled by how much importance Gandhi attributed to it. The viceroy insisted that he could not condone publicly the breaches of law, nor could we, in present financial circumstances, sacrifice revenue by repealing it. After prolonged arguing, Irwin suggested that Gandhi meet with Sir George Schuster, the finance minister. Gandhi agreed and Irwin conceded in his minutes that it may be necessary to do something to meet him on salt. They broke for dinner and Gandhi returned at 9:30 p.m. to continue negotiations with Irwin and his Home Secretary, Mr. Emerson. At that late hour, Gandhi agreed to abandon the boycott, assuring complete freedom for cloth merchants to do as they liked, which so cheered the viceroy that he noted, "We shall succeed." On the difficult question of how to reduce sterling debts, Irwin explained he must telegraph the Secretary of State. The thorny question of secession remained unresolved, but they both knew it was much less urgent than the other issues. So Gandhi was driven home that March night, feeling rather proud of himself and more hopeful as to the prospects of peace in India's future than he had felt for many a year. Most of the older members of Congress's working committee who waited up to welcome him back to Ansari's house were equally enthusiastic, but Jawaharlal was deeply depressed by what he heard. To Nehru's revolutionary mind, Gandhi had surrendered too much. You seem to be feeling lonely and almost uninterested, Gandhi wrote him the next morning. That must not be. My strength depends upon you. He passionately pressed Jawaharlal to criticize, amend, or reject any or all of the points he had discussed with Irwin. Gandhi was determined at whatever the cost to keep Nehru in the Congress, fearing otherwise that the heart of India's nationalist movement would break away, its vital youth brigade rushing off in rage and frustration. The next day's meeting focused on confiscated land sold to the third parties during Satyagraha campaigns. Gandhi insisted that much lands be returned to their original owners. Irwin argued that local governments were in charge of the land revenue and he could not interfere. Gandhi said that Vallabhbhai Patel was doubtful whether he could carry the settlement in Gujarat unless they got some accommodation on this land question. But the Viceroy simply repeated that it was not in his power. Irwin then pressed him very hard to give up picketing. Now it was Gandhi's turn adamantly to refuse, though he promised all picketing would remain courteous and peaceful. After much wrangling, Irwin agreed when Gandhi pledged Congress would immediately suspend picketing if there was any abuse. They were still arguing about salt, however, when it looked as if Gandhi was going to have to leave for his evening meal, which, as he previously told the Viceroy, he could not eat after the sun had set. Irwin asked Gandhi to invite Miss Slade, whose father he had known, to bring up his food to him in the Viceregal Palace. I was greatly interested in meeting her. She evidently venerates him very profoundly, and one felt one had suddenly been switched into a rather different world. What a shock it must have been to Lord Irwin to watch that tall, khadi-clad, English-born admiral's daughter, bowing low, reverently to set the simple food she had prepared with her fair hands at the dark naked feet of the man she worshipped as Master, Mahatma. Did he realize then that the days of British rule here were numbered, or did he simply think poor Meera quite mad? It was almost midnight before they finally reached an agreement, the Viceroy noted, with the old man telling me that he was going to throw his whole heart and soul into trying to cooperate in constitution building. Gandhi returned to meet with Emerson the next day for 2 hours. Irwin, seeing him only briefly to initial their agreement. The Congress Working Committee met on March 5th to endorse Gandhi-Irwin agreement, directing all Congress committees to discontinue civil disobedience. Gandhi graciously acknowledged the Viceroy's inexhaustible patience, industry and courtesy throughout the very delicate negotiations. He elaborated upon each of the provisions of the agreement, urging the congressmen honorably and fully to implement every clause to ensure peace. A day later, Irwin wrote to thank Gandhi. It has been a great privilege to me to be given this opportunity of meeting and knowing you. I do pray, as I believe, that history may say you and I were permitted to be instruments in doing something big for India and for humanity. The euphoria and mutual admiration felt by Gandhi and Irvin was hardly shared by their younger friends and lower echelons of the British services. Jawaharlal's depression only deepened when he read the final draft of the agreement. Was it for this that our people had behaved so gallantly for a year? Were all our brave words and deeds to end in this? He cried, quoting from T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land. This is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper. Irvin's right-wing steel frame of sun-baked ICS men and British police sullenly showed their contempt for the Viceroy's surrender to the seditious little fakir. They were not going to let any Indian assassins like Sikh Bhagat Singh escape the gallows merely because a salt thief pled with the Viceroy for his clemency. In London, Stanley Baldwin, leader of the Tory opposition, announced that his party would not join in any roundtable conference attended by Gandhi. On March 23rd, Gandhi tested the power and limits of his new friendship with Irvin, writing a dear friend letter to the Viceroy in which he passionately appealed for commutation of the death sentences passed on Bhagat Singh and two other terrorists. Popular opinion demands commutation, Gandhi wrote, warning that the executions, if carried out, would endanger peace. The Revolutionary Party had assured him that sparing Bhagat's life would halt terrorist activities. That very day, Bhagat Singh and his companions were hanged. A general strike protesting the deaths of those martyrs was called by Nehru and Subhas Bose, whose hatred for British rule blazed on the eve of the meeting of the Congress held that year in Karachi. On his arrival at the Congress, Gandhi was confronted with a protest demonstration by many young men wearing red shirts, carrying black flags and shouting slogans of denunciation. Down with Gandhiism and go back Gandhi. He was unruffled by those insults, viewing them as but mild expressions of youthful grief. Communal riots racked Kanpur even as the Congress Working Committee began its deliberations in Karachi, which was destined to become the first capital of Muslim Pakistan. Gandhi passionately addressed the Congress on its first day, speaking under the open sky, having flung aside the sword. There is nothing except the cup of love which I can offer to those who oppose me. I live in the hope that, if not in this birth, in some other birth I shall be able to hug all humanity in friendly embrace. He then turned to the carnage in Kanpur, where deadly violence by Hindus and Muslims followed Bhagat's execution. They were all children of the same soil, of one motherland, Gandhi reminded them. Many young delegates at the Karachi Congress were apprehensive over Gandhi's settlement with Irvin and told him so. My mind is full of misgivings, he agreed, disarming critics with his lack of vanity and readiness to admit he might be wrong. But it is a sin not to do what circumstances have made it a duty to do. It is a principle of satyagraha that if there is an opportunity for talks, talks should be tried. The Karachi Congress ended in a record-breaking 2 days. Vallabhbhai delivering an even shorter speech than Gandhi had previously done when he presided. Nehru drafted an impressive list of fundamental rights and economic changes that were easily carried, but most of those goals, especially ones like equal rights without any bar on account of sex, and a living wage for industrial workers, healthy conditions of work, protection against old age, sickness and unemployment, would take longer than the century's remaining 7 decades to enforce. Returning to Delhi, the Congress Working Committee agreed that Gandhi should serve as Congress's sole delegate to any further future roundtable conference, a strategic error that imposed an impossible burden on Gandhi. reflecting his own mistrust of Nehru's judgment and fear that if he took Vallabhbhai Patel, who could have helped him mightily, Jawaharlal would have quit Congress. Karachi and his summit with Irwin had worn Gandhi out, and though he rested in late April, by early May he wrote Charlie Andrews to report that implementing the settlement in the teeth of official sullenness, unwillingness, and even opposition in a very difficult business. It tries even my patience. He received many letters and wires from London and America, inviting him to visit, speak, and stay with friends, but he turned down virtually all of them.